This video is presented for historical and educational purposes only. World Documentary Archives strongly condemns hate speech, violence, and all forms of extremism.
World War II is history now. Now is the final victory inscribed and recorded in the pages of time. But in millions of hearts, the joy is strained. These were our brothers, our husbands, our sons. These were the soldiers who fought fascism to the death. And these were just people who happened to be in the path of total war. The war that began with the shelling of Shanghai and the bombing of Barcelona, that ended with the shambles of Berlin and the wasteland of Nagasaki. They too died fighting fascism. Fascism was the world's most expensive sin. And these were homes, streets, neighborhoods. Some were old, some new, some fashionable, some sordid. Doesn't make much difference now. And this was a city. An empty shell? Not quite. There are people left in all the ruined cities of the world, people who are said to be alive. Two of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, ruthless power and war, passed over them, and still they live. As in a nightmare, they shift between the burdens of death and the burdens of life, and cannot tell which are heavier. Of human endurance? No. For a third horseman rides through the twisted town on the black horse of famine. And still another comes, the fourth, the Pale Horseman. In biblical days, his name was pestilence. His modern name is epidemic disease. His shadow is in the sewer waters of 1,000 towns. These people slake their thirst with typhoid fever and dysentery, with infectious jaundice, and possibly with infantile paralysis. They don't know they're helping the Pale Horseman on his way, while for them there is no help. To fight disease, you need hospitals and medical supplies, doctors and nurses, clean sheets and disinfectants. Red Crosses made easy targets. The people of thousands of towns had no place to die in, let alone to get well in. A wave of tuberculosis which spread over Europe with the German armies could not be stopped without food, shelter, and sanitation. This is shelter for millions of Europeans. And this is where they prepare their scraps of food. When millions have been living in filth, cooking in filth, eating in filth, sickness must be taken for granted. But who can take such scenes for granted? Luftwaffe first rose to carry death to unarmed civilians, thousands of trapped Europeans hurried from their threatened homes to seek safety elsewhere. As a glacier pushes along a mass of tumbling rock, so the Blitz stirred up a great horde of refugees. From Holland, from Luxembourg, from Belgium, from France. Soon a continent was running for dear life. No, more than a continent, for a globe was on fire. At the other end of the axis, the people of China had taken to the roads on their bare feet. They moved a country out of the reach of their greedy enemies with their bare hands. In Asia alone, the refugees numbered more than 100 million. But it wasn't Asia alone, for soon the Russians were pushed from their homeland. More uprooted millions suffered the hardships of the road. Exposure, fatigue, hunger, neglected wounds, neglected illness, the rotting bodies of the unburied dead. Contaminated food, polluted water, the effects of unceasing terror on the minds of men, women, and children. The lack of sanitation, the living conditions that invited the spread of contagious disease. This is the birthplace of epidemics. This is where the Pale Horseman started on his deadly ride. But his progress is not unnoticed. Far away in Washington, capital of the United States, where a joint high command worked on the military strategy of the war, another international group of experts assembles information regarding the spread of epidemics. Epidemiologists, they're called, a sort of G2 in the war against disease. Because they know how epidemics travel, they can predict cholera along the Yangtze next month from cases reported in Chongqing last week. Their statistics are kept up to date by a vast international organization. Typhus in Europe. They've even made a picture of its movement based on figures that were cabled from the underground. From the bestial filth of German concentration camps, the disease spread along the highways and railroad lines of France. How? Carried by fathers and brothers and husbands, prisoners of war returning to their loved ones with joy in their hearts and with a deadly organism in their bodies. In a great gesture of kindness, the Nazis let these men return to their wives and children. The poor Frenchmen rejoiced in their good fortune, for the typhus microbe is invisible. Soon the world would be on its way back home, on the road that seems so short because the goal is so real. But maybe your home isn't there anymore. Better hurry. Better hurry. Would the Pale Horseman ride on all these roads? Would he follow the returning refugees? Would he shadow the homeward migration of 200 million displaced persons? Would they escape the aftermath of all great wars, from the Crusades through World War I, the pestilence that made battle casualties seem trivial? This time, epidemics could cross rivers and mountain ranges. They could fly from one hemisphere to another. Multitudes have been exposed to malaria, typhus, tuberculosis, and a score of other infectious diseases. What could prevent the Pale Horseman from riding into every village, town, and city in the world? Science is a cold word. Few of us comprehend its day-to-day procedures or understand its language. Because the laboratory has given us so many new ways of killing one another, we sometimes forget that the mainspring of scientific research has always been the effort to save and prolong human life. The microbe fighters have reached great peaks in our century, the scientific century. Biologists, bacteriologists, chemists have all contributed to the discovery of blood plasma, the sulfur drugs, atibrin, penicillin. Now we would see if these wonderful new weapons could help save us from the historical disaster of post-war pestilence. For wherever the Allied armies went, they brought techniques and equipment for the prevention of disease. Water made drinkable by the Army purification units was dispensed to everyone, not simply out of human kindness, but also because civilian epidemics would hamper military operations. In January 1944, 1,000 cases of typhus were reported in Naples. The disease threatened all of Italy and might have spread to other countries. But stricken areas were shut off, and hundreds of Italians were immunized with vaccine. For the first time, DDT, a powerful new insecticide, was used intensively to exterminate the typhus-carrying louse. In 1 month, civilian cases dropped to 200. By March, the disease had practically disappeared. In 1942, strange new kinds of malaria that resisted the treatments then known threatened to decimate our troops on the South Pacific Islands. So jungle laboratories were set up to study the native mosquitoes that carried the disease, to learn their breeding and living habits. The sanitary engineers were soon prepared to wage a successful war against a menace that had been more dangerous than Japanese gunfire. Whole regiments were detailed to clean up the mosquito-infested swamps. And when stagnant water pools could not be drained, they were sprayed. The islands were made safe to fight in, and to live in, too. For Filipinos later saw the amazing spectacle of planes being used to strafe the Pale Horseman. Not bullets, but DDT dropped from the skies as the pilots trained to kill used their skills to save human life. But the misery of the peoples liberated from the Japanese was more than human hearts could stand, even the horror-hardened hearts of soldiers. Wherever it landed, the Medical Corps established hospitals and clinics for the disease-ridden recipients of Greater Asia co-prosperity. Bombed-out nurses were brought back to their hospitals. After years of Japanese occupation, practically every child in the community was a sick child. War-toughened Army medicos had to answer the inexorable, insistent demands of newborn infants. They set up maternity wards in the midst of desolation to give the famine-stricken mothers what help they could. And they organized children's wards where food was more important than medicine. To the peoples of many lands, many colors, many tongues came the rituals of modern medicine. For the first time, their blood was examined. They were introduced to adhesive tape. The new atibrin tablets were often the first drugs they'd ever seen. Their children were treated by men who looked like the other warriors, but whose hands moved with tenderness and knowing care. Right into the land of the enemy. This was the way of the strange conqueror, healing, preventing disease, controlling epidemics. For the Pale Horseman does not distinguish between friend and foe, nor can mere border signs delay his passage from one country to another. But now he meets a more formidable barrier. The armed cordons posted along the war-torn roads prevent the innocent refugees from carrying epidemics in their baggage or in their very blood, to keep them from hurrying to their families with a gift of death. The Army had the first responsibility for the care of displaced persons in liberated areas. The care of millions of battered pawns from yesterday's fiendish game of geopolitics, yesterday's labor slaves, yesterday's prisoners, yesterday's deportees and refugees. Today they are a suffering mass of sick, homeless, desolate human beings, without funds, without papers, separated by thousands of miles from their broken families. This is the human rubble of global war. The Allied armies have set up machinery to sort it, organize it, reclaim it for a new life. Identification must be established. Transportation must be arranged. Relatives must be found and notified. Governmental red tape must be untangled. A vast, complex job made up of millions of individual personal problems, millions of individual stories of hardship and heartbreak, millions of prayers. Please get us home fast. The Army centers for displaced persons are outposts in the battle against disease. The first soap, the first bath, the first attack on parasites and germs, the first clean clothes. This disease goes with undernourishment. The doctor hasn't seen anything like it in a long medical career. There are hospital facilities for the more serious cases, like the concentration camp survivors who cannot digest food after years of starvation. Most of the people who pass through the centers are well enough to keep moving. But those who show signs of infection must stay behind. It's hard, but epidemics must not travel with a homebound multitudes. The hand of the Army is not the only one stretched out to relieve the stricken. The people of more fortunate lands are sending them their first warm clothes in 5 winters. What difference if the shirts are old and worn? For the fight against illness, they're in perfect style. They can keep out the cold winds that will whistle through the ruins of Europe. But kind-hearted individuals could not do the great job alone. It required the cooperation of all men, official, wholehearted cooperation. The Relief and Rehabilitation Administration of the United Nations is a working example of such international effort. This is not charity, for each member country pays its way. Some nations can spare supplies, others need them badly. By tapping the world's surplus resources and making them available wherever they're urgently needed, UNRRA is fighting pestilence with prevention. UNRRA medical supplies from the United States and England are making it possible for the doctors of France and Greece to go back to their vital work of saving lives. And in addition, specially trained medical teams are brought in from other countries to help stop the spread of epidemics. The care of one case today prevents 1,000 cases tomorrow. And far from the pain and fever in Europe, Asia, Africa, the leaders of the United Nations met once again, this time to give our civilization its last chance. The doctors of many lands were there with them. The public health specialists who were planning the final victories over worldwide epidemics. Planning an international health organization that would carry on their work in UNRRA and in the League of Nations Health Office into the days of the new peace. For these children are not safe, no matter how far from the battlefields they play their games. No spot on earth is safe when the Pale Horseman rides free. He can carry contagion from Greece to Oslo or to Kansas City. He can slow down the rebuilding of a Dutch town with a parasite that comes from Asia. There is no stopping epidemics unless everybody stops them. For health is really international. Worldwide epidemic control depends on every doctor and on every patient, on a few epidemiologists and on millions of refugees, on each clothing contributor and on each and every scientist. If we work together, there is hope that the young survivors of the war may live to restore their broken world. This time there may be no influenza epidemic, no diphtheria epidemic, no new scourge. But that is just a hope. The Pale Horseman is still riding high.